news more often, covering the nation and the world. This is NewsNet, Nightside Edition.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to NewsNet Nightside Edition. I'm Remington Hernandez. It's great to have you with us. Now let's take a look at the news from across the country and around the world. Coming up, the debate over how much the Federal Reserve should raise interest rate rages on. Plus, former President Donald Trump's answer to Twitter has launched. Then, the defense has rested in the federal civil rights case against 3 officers accused of violating George Floyd's civil rights. And 5 people found dead in a Colorado apartment, likely overdosed. The details of these stories and others ahead, but first, the latest on our top story. Russian President Vladimir Putin has decided to recognize the independence of separatist regions in eastern Ukraine, in a move that has already led to sanctions from the West. Speaking to the Russian people, Putin called Ukraine a U.S. colony with a puppet regime and announced the signing of a cooperation pact with Donetsk and Luhansk. It came amid a spike in skirmishes there that prompted Putin to order forces to, quote, maintain peace in the regions. The Kremlin decree left unclear when or even whether troops would enter Ukraine, but the announcement raised fears that an invasion was imminent, if not already underway. With an estimated 150,000 Russian troops massed on 3 sides of Ukraine, the U.S. has warned that Moscow has already decided to invade. Putin has said Ukraine's close ties to NATO are a threat to Russian security, and he is willing to take countermeasures to protect his country. The move comes after President Joe Biden and Putin tentatively agreed to a possible meeting in a last-ditch effort to avoid war. Though if Russia moves in, the meeting will be off. Biden has already issued an executive order that will prohibit new investment, trade, and financing in the separatist regions or in anyone determined to operate in those areas of Ukraine. Officials say tougher sanctions targeting Russia could come if they invade. Now to business news. Federal Reserve Governor Michelle Bowman said Monday that she was open to lifting interest rates by more than the traditional quarter point at the central bank's next meeting in March. The Fed is looking to raise rates as inflation surged to 7.5% in January compared with a year earlier, the biggest increase in 4 decades. And Bowman's comments came after several officials on Friday pushed back against the idea of a half-point increase. Many economists have said the Fed has moved too slowly in response to an unexpectedly persistent surge in prices, raising the risk that inflation could remain high. But if it raises rates too quickly, the Fed risks choking off growth and hiring. The bank is almost certain to start lifting interest rates at its March 15th to 16th meeting, with most officials backing a quarter-point increase. Any increase next month would be the first since 2018. With prices on almost everything on the rise, even maintaining a roof over your head is becoming more difficult as rent explodes across the country. Tolly Anderson now takes a look at the issue.
The monthly stress of handing a check to your landlord is only growing, and it's causing many to make adjustments, from dipping into savings to downsizing and even risking eviction without a federal moratorium. According to Realtor.com, a recent analysis of properties with 2 or fewer bedrooms in the 50 largest U.S. metro areas shows rent rose an astounding 19.3% from December 2020 to December of last year. The biggest jump in rent prices was in Miami, Florida, 49.8% higher than the previous year. Other cities in the Sunshine State, Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville saw a rise in rent prices too. San Diego, Las Vegas, Austin, and Memphis all saw spikes of more than 25% during that time period as well. And the trend is continuing. Rental costs rose 0.5% in January of this year from December. While it might seem small, that was the biggest increase in 20 years and will likely accelerate. But why are prices so high? Experts say it could be from a nationwide housing shortage, extremely low rental vacancies, and unrelenting demands as young adults continue to enter the crowded housing market. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, rental vacancy rates during the fourth quarter of 2021 fell to 5.6%. That's the lowest since 1984. Meanwhile, the number of homes for sale has been at a record low, with an estimated shortfall of 5.8 million single-family dwellings. It's a 51% leap from the end of 2019. And can be blamed on slowed home construction as crews deal with material and labor shortages. So what can be done to help renters? Well, only 2 states have rent control laws, and in places like Arizona, the law gives landlords total control. So it will likely come down to how long the market pressures last. I'm Tolly Anderson reporting.
Former President Donald Trump's social media app launched Monday as he seeks a new digital stage to rally his supporters and fight big tech limits on speech a year after he was banned from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Truth Social is now being offered for download from the Apple App Store to a limited number of subscribers who had pre-ordered, with others added to a waiting list to be given access over the next 10 days. The site encountered technical glitches shortly after launch, though, with reports that subscribers were shut out for hours and others had trouble signing on. The platform is not expected to be open to anyone who wants to download it until next month. Still, according to Apple's rankings, Truth Social was the top free app in the U.S. Monday morning. The defense attorney for the third officer charged with violating George Floyd's civil rights rested his case Monday, paving the way for closing arguments in the month-long federal trial. 38-year-old Thomas Lane's attorney ended his arguments after Lane testified that he thought Floyd was doing okay while handcuffed, face down on the street with Officer Derek Chauvin's knee pressed to his neck, until paramedics arrived and turned the 46-year-old black man over. Lane's co-defendants, Tu Tao and J. Alexander Kung, presented their cases last week. All are accused of depriving Floyd of his right to medical care. Kung and Tao are also charged with failing to intervene to stop Chauvin. Defense attorneys blame inadequate training for the incident, but prosecutors contend the now former officers failed to act against their better judgment. Chauvin has already been convicted in state court and pleaded guilty to federal charges. Meanwhile, the fate of 3 white men who chased and killed Ahmaud Arbery is in the hands of a federal jury tonight. Prosecutors told the jury of 8 white people, 3 black people, and 1 Hispanic person that Gregory McMichael, Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan acted out of pent-up racial anger and should be convicted of hate crimes. Defense attorneys argued that the black man was fatally shot in self-defense and had acted suspiciously during prior trips to the neighborhood. Verdicts on hate crime charges rest not on whether the pursuit and shooting were justified, but whether they were motivated by racism. The 3 were already convicted of murder in state court. Colorado officials are reporting tonight that the cause of death of 5 people found lifeless in a suburban Denver apartment was likely a fentanyl overdose. Drug tests done at the apartment in Commerce City, about 7 miles northeast of Denver, found an overwhelming amount of fentanyl and some cocaine. The evidence suggests that 3 women and 2 men were snorting the substance they believed to be solely cocaine when they died Sunday. Autopsies and drug testing of each victim still need to be done to confirm how they died. Fentanyl is often mixed with other drugs, unbeknownst to the users, and officials are now concerned that there are other people who might have drugs from the same supply as the one used by the victims, potentially putting their lives at risk too. The Internal Revenue Service announced Monday that those doing their taxes online can opt out of facial recognition following criticism of what would have been a requirement. The change comes after the agency announced earlier this month that it was transitioning away from ID.me, which required that taxpayers identify themselves through facial recognition to access their accounts. That was met by backlash from lawmakers and activists alike. One criticism is that such services tend to be worse at identifying people of color. Taxpayers can now opt to verify their identity via live virtual interviews with a representative, though facial recognition can still be used if they choose. Eventually, all video selfies used in the process will be deleted, and the IRS will switch to the government's own login.gov for next tax season. China says it will impose new sanctions on U.S. defense contractors Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin, stepping up a feud with Washington over security and Beijing's strategic ambitions. Officials cited a newly passed anti-foreign sanctions law that took effect in 2021 that was in response to a $100 million deal approved by the U.S. for maintenance of Taiwan's missile defense systems by the 2 companies. Taiwan is a democratically self-governed island that China claims as its own territory. The U.S. has no formal relations with it, but is its main ally. And U.S. law requires the government to ensure Taiwan can defend itself. The weapons sales have increased in recent years, angering China. And Italy's Mount Etna, one of Europe's most active volcanoes, has roared back to action after a few months of relative quiet, sending up a 7.5-mile-high volcanic ash cloud over eastern Sicily. The lava flow was centered around the crater on the mountain's southeast slope. There were no immediate reports of injuries or property damage on the inhabited towns ringing the slopes around the volcano, which is popular with hikers, skiers, and other tourists. As of tonight, the lava flow from the crater has stopped. Straight ahead, we'll have more, so keep it right here.